Who Gets to Decide? A liberty-based podcast that brings a little piece of sanity to a confused society drowning in a culture of craziness. And here is your host, Seth Martin.
Well, all right. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Who Gets to Decide. This is episode 631. I'm Seth Martin, your host. Thank you for joining me this evening. Glad you're here and always happy you're listening. All right. Well, as you can see, I've got former Senator Lindsey Graham on the screen here. And, you know, man, I'm not one to celebrate someone's death. I mean, that's just wrong in so many ways. But let me just say this. I wasn't disappointed to hear that Lindsey Graham had passed away. This guy has been just an awful human being. And there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than having awful human beings in positions of power. Because power is one of these things that it just magnifies whoever you are. If you're someone who's bossy and stubborn and, just think of negative qualities. If I put you in power where you can tell a whole bunch of people what to do, you're the worst kind of person in that role. And Lindsey Graham was that. So it's clear to me, or it's clear to you, I'm sure, listening to me, that you know exactly how I feel about Lindsey Graham's passing. I don't celebrate it, but at the same time, I'm not sad for it. And today, you know, listening to the Sunday shows, today's Sunday, July 12th, listening to the Sunday shows, I was just appalled at the way they were remembering this guy. Like, this guy is a big reason. Well, instead of being $40 trillion in debt, we might only be 20. I mean, this guy's a big part of that, okay? Not to mention all the people that died. You know, innocent people. I mean, a whole bunch of bad people died, for sure. But a whole bunch of innocent people died, too. And the problem, look, I mean, just on a side note, the problem with waging war like we're doing in the Middle East, just in a nutshell, and this has been known for a while, actually. There's what was it? General Petraeus. I think it was Petraeus came up with this idea of insurgent math. Okay, you kill 3 of their guys, and it creates like 25 more insurgents. So, in other words, there is no way to kill your way through this, and not unless you kill everybody. You kill every single soul over there in the Middle East. And of course, the reason that happens, the reason, you know, you get Petraeus's insurgent math is, just think of it, if it happened in your family. You know, maybe you're off to college, okay? And while you're away, your house gets bombed and your mom and your dad and your sister are blown up and killed. Well, all of a sudden, college doesn't seem like the most important thing you could be doing, right? Maybe it's picking up an AK and going to fight America, who's killing your friends and neighbors and your family members. And this is why insurgent math happens. And it's really not that hard to understand. But for someone like Lindsey Graham, who's just had this lust for power, and you're going to see some of that on display. I'm going to play some of it here in a minute. But I was just almost sickened to the core that nobody, and maybe it'll come in a few days or something, but nobody had anything negative to say about Lindsey Graham's role in the Senate and his role in all these foreign wars. You're going to hear some stuff in a minute. I'm playing some clips from Megyn Kelly's show where he was over there actively. You know, it's widely reported now and very much true that Trump was kind of manipulated into this conflict with Iran. Well, that guy on the screen is a big part of that. Okay, that guy, Lindsey Graham, was flying over to the Middle East to meet with Netanyahu to coach them on how to manipulate our president to go drop bombs on Iran. And now we're in this conflict and we can't get out of it. Okay, so that's Lindsey Graham. It almost feels like to me that God has struck down Lindsey Graham. Okay, like it has to be this way because God was so cross with Lindsey Graham that he took his life. That's what it feels like to me because that's how bad this guy was. Okay, there's almost nobody in the Senate or Congress as bad as Lindsey Graham. There used to be. John McCain was bad. Okay, but God took him too. Thank God. Okay, and the reality is, all this warmongering and empire building or empire holding on to, it's all going to go away because, for one, we're going to run out of money. But for two, all these old guys are going to die off. All the people that believe this way, they tend to be, and I'm not trying to be ugly to older people. I mean, I'm getting to be an older person myself. But you go talk to somebody that's 70, 65 or 70 or 80, and they are just not in touch with reality. I mean, they're looking at, and I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if it comes from Fox or what, but there's like a lack of knowledge about what is actually happening in the world with respect to our foreign policy and, you know, the empire, trying to keep the empire. You know, it's almost like we're desperately trying to hang on to empire. We don't need an empire. We've never needed an empire. In fact, after the Soviet Union collapsed, what we should have done is cut our defense budget by like 80%, bring all of our troops home, close all these bases, and get about making money and trading with people and being prosperous and living the actual words of our founding. That's what we should have done. And of course, we didn't do that. We decided to go set the Middle East on fire and spend trillions and trillions of dollars. And notice we're not any safer today than we were on September 11th, 2001. Okay, we're just not. We're not any safer. In fact, we're much more at risk, both abroad and domestically. I mean, a lot of our Fourth Amendment freedoms are gone. Our free speech has been challenged on numerous occasions. And there's this debt looming that's just going to wipe us all out. The government's going to inflate every penny of savings that you have away from you. I mean, we are not safer in almost every way you can think of because of what people like Lindsey Graham advocated for and voted for and manipulated people into. I mean, it's a disaster. It's a complete disaster. And there was nothing on the Sunday shows about that. It was all about my friend Lindsey Graham. I just talked to him the other day and all this bullshit. Nobody cares, at least not in the political establishment, that this guy is probably personally responsible for multiple millions of people's deaths. Okay? That's the reality of the situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the softball coverage first from ABC. And I'll probably have a few words to say about it because that's just the way I am. I've got a few words to say about damn near everything. So we're going to play ABC's coverage, and then I'm going to jump to Megyn Kelly, and I've clipped some things out on Megyn Kelly's show that I want to play and comment on. And look, I'm going to try to make this a short show because look, I don't want to spend any more time than I absolutely have to talking about Lindsey Graham. To me, he was the single worst person in either the House or the Senate. And that's saying something, okay? Because you have people like Adam Schiff and that Swalwell character, and you got some pretty rotten folks in the Congress and in the Senate. But Lindsey Graham was number one, public enemy number one, in my opinion. All right, let's jump into this first clip. Lindsey Graham died.
Overnight, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the most powerful and prominent Republican lawmakers of the last 2 decades, passing away at the age of 71. Washington, D.C. EMS dispatched to Graham's home on Saturday night for a man in apparent cardiac arrest.
Cardiac arrest.
At 2 in the morning Sunday, Graham's office putting out this statement saying the senator died from a brief and sudden illness, adding Senator Graham's family appreciates prayers at this time and asks for privacy during this incredibly difficult period. Graham had just returned to Washington from a trip to Ukraine, seen here meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday.
South Carolina, an open seat. At the moment, it looks like the Republican is ahead.
The senior senator from South Carolina served more than 30 years in Congress, more than 20 of them in the upper chamber, becoming one of its most recognizable members, even mounting a failed bid for president in 2016.
No one here, including me, ever expected to hear me say, "I'm Lindsey Graham, and I'm running for President of the United States."
He went from political foe of President Trump's to one of his closest allies in the United States Senate, a persistent advocate for Ukraine in its defense against Russia. President Zelensky calling Graham a true defender of freedom, a staunch advocate for Ukraine, and a determined leader. In recent months,
Okay, a staunch advocate for freedom? Whose freedom? Certainly none of the people running around in the Middle East. I mean, look at how we manipulated Ukraine. Ukraine could be peaceful right now, and they would still have the Donbass in that whole region that borders Russia. They wouldn't have the peninsula, I forgot what it's called, but the place to the south where their warm water port was. They were never getting that back. Okay, they were never getting that back. But you know what's going to happen in Ukraine? They're going to lose the entire eastern side of Ukraine to Russia. That's what's going to happen to Ukraine. And you'll hear some reports and hear maybe about how they're making big strides against Russia and all this bullshit. No, they're not. As soon as we stop giving them money, this thing is over. And I don't know if we're going to stop giving them money, but as soon as we do, it's over for Ukraine. They are going to lose the entire eastern half of their country. And all because they were running around trying to join NATO. And all they had to do is just stay neutral, like Switzerland. No, Ukraine, Lindsey Graham's a big part of the problem in Ukraine. And he wasn't a staunch advocate for freedom or whatever the hell Volodymyr Zelensky said. There's bullshit. Okay, here we go.
Graham also intensely backing President Trump's war in Iran.
We're comply with the law of war, but all hell's about to break loose on this regime.
Graham also instrumental in confirming Trump's Supreme Court nominees and mounting this fiery defense of Justice Brett Kavanaugh in 2018.
This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics.
Graham spending more time with Trump than perhaps any other lawmaker, serving as a key advisor. The pair often seen golfing. Overnight, the president calling Graham one of the greatest people and senators I have ever known, and a true American patriot.
South Carolina's governor will now appoint an interim senator to fill Graham's seat until his term ends in January. Graham was running for re-election, so Republicans in South Carolina now have to hold a special primary to fill his spot on the ballot, Gio.
And Jay, this comes as there are continued questions now about the health of Senator Mitch McConnell.
That's exactly right, Gio. McConnell was checked into the hospital exactly 4 weeks ago today. His staff has still not said why. It's an unknown medical condition. His office continues to say that McConnell is getting treatment and that he's working.
Okay, this program is about Lindsey Graham, so we're not going to spend much on Mitch McConnell. But I do want to say there's a theory floating around there. Because Mitch McConnell was definitely unresponsive. He definitely had paramedics come to his house. His wife was not there. His wife was in China meeting with the vice president of China, which is like, what? And, think about senators, they've got intelligence information. And so I don't know what's going on there. But the thing about it is tomorrow they're supposed to be back in session. McConnell is on, he's on a couple of different committees. Committees have important appropriations bills that they need to vote on before they go to the floor. And, it's just kind of a weird situation. If they manage to slow roll this all the way to August 3rd, which is pretty far off, it's still another 3 weeks. But if they can slow roll this all the way to August 3rd, then they won't have to have a special election. Because the fear is, and when I say the fear, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the Republican establishment, is that Thomas Massie could actually mount a campaign and win that Senate seat. But if they can extend and pretend that Mitch McConnell is still lucid and working with his staff and working with his wife and all this kind of stuff, then they can get past that August 3rd deadline. And then the recess appointment, there would just be a recess appointment in that role. And that person would just be senator until the term is complete. So some pretty nefarious stuff probably going on. I mean, we don't know. There's no way to really know at this point. Maybe we'll find out here in the next week or two. But there is a theory rolling around that the Republican Party, and probably at the behest of the White House, is trying to extend and pretend that Mitch McConnell is still alive so that they can get past this window and avoid another election for another Senate seat in Kentucky. And the reason is because they don't want Thomas Massie. They feel like Thomas Massie could probably win that. Now, Thomas Massie lost the congressional seat, but you got to remember the congressional district is very, very small, and they spent $30 million, trying to boot him out of there. They would have to spend 10 times that or more even to try to get him out of the whole state. So that's not likely to happen. So that's all I want to say about that. We'll move on to the next clip. The next series of clips actually are from Megyn Kelly's show. Now, these clips are about 4 months old, but this is, in my opinion, this is the way people should have been talking about Lindsey Graham today, the day after his death. Now, 4 months ago, that's fine too, but the way people were talking about him today was just like, you would think they were talking about, I don't know, Mahatma Gandhi or something. Certainly not Lindsey Graham. All right, let's jump into these next clips from Megyn Kelly's show.
The United States has a growing internal threat that must be dealt with and is a homicidal maniac, as I said yesterday, in my opinion, that President Trump apparently is a grave threat to us all. And while President Trump is all over the map on potential timing to end the war in Iran, or the, quote, little excursion, as he's now calling it, there is reporting that some of his advisors are now pushing to find an off-ramp, understanding that with rising oil prices and gas prices and sentiment in the United States, the majority is against this war. Republicans are for it, but independents are overwhelmingly against it. And of course, Democrats are too, but independents matter for the midterms. Many think this is not worth it.
This is exactly the problem, right? Of course, everybody knows this now, that Trump is desperately trying to find an off-ramp. But this is before, like I said, this was 4 months ago. And so this was during the time when, he still thought he could win and, wasn't going to have to be a ground invasion and all this kind of stuff. But things changed. And so, just know, you'll see it here in the next series of clips, the way she talks about Lindsey Graham and I don't know, I love Megyn Kelly. She's awesome. So let's listen to her next clip here.
To be going up prior to the midterms. There are reports that top Republicans in difficult races in November have been calling the White House saying, please find a way out. This is not going to be helpful. But if any part of any of this is true, and again, the White House is denying, they call this Wall Street Journal report full of crap, that some advisors are pushing for an off-ramp. But if any part of it is true, it's not going to matter if Senator Lindsey Graham has his way. And his cohort over at Fox News, Sean Hannity is Lindsey Graham by a different name. It's amazing to me to watch them cheerlead this. We've got 7 U.S. personnel dead. We've got a girls' school, 175 young girls dead in Iran. And there's serious dispute. We'll get into who's behind that. But there's only serious dispute because the president is now saying that it wasn't us, but his own defense secretary over his shoulder is saying it's under investigation. And senators like Kennedy are saying, yeah, it looks like it was us. and the Wall Street Journal and others are reporting it was us. None of this is good, okay? And you would think at a minimum, somebody like Senator Graham would like pause and not look so bloodthirsty. How does that make the Trump administration look good when we know that he's working hand in hand with the president, that he's been one of his chief advisors, to make him look so cavalier about the death unfolding in the Middle East right now and the likely of more to come? Last night on Hannity's program, Lindsey Graham did, like he was our Secretary of State or even our president. It was obscene. Who does he think he is? No one elected him as president. No one ever would. As if the American public would elect Lindsey Graham to lead this war. He thinks he's the commander in chief. He's starting to sound truly deluded, like someone needs a psychiatric intervention. Make agreements with other countries. Defend them if they go to war. This is what he's saying. He's threatening our allies. He's saying, I'll allow this. I'll push for that. Now I'll punish you in the following way. Who died and elected him president or secretary of state? And he may be a duly elected senator from South Carolina to represent the interests of South Carolina, but he's not the president. And by the way, he's not even representing the interests of South Carolina. He made clear last night that if you are a so-called isolationist, or if you've expressed doubts about the wisdom of this war, he's not on your side. And he said, and I quote, I'm with Israel. I don't care about you. I'm with Israel. You are an American senator representing the interests of South Carolinians who put you in office, sir, not Israel. You don't work for them, Lindsey. This is getting insane, you guys. Someone needs to reel him in, and he needs to be absolutely nowhere near the president's orbit, as I said yesterday. But Fox News, I tweeted this out.
All right. Yeah. The truth is Lindsey Graham has been like that always. It's just that what you're seeing in America, I think, is more and more people coming around to we don't have control of our country. We have these crazy people in power, and they pretend like they're doing public service, but the reality is they're serving themselves, they're serving their interest. They're not even listening. They have to get elected, but then once they're elected, they just do whatever the hell they want to do, and there's like nothing anybody can do about it. And so that's kind of the situation. And I think Megyn Kelly's absolutely right. I mean, somebody needs to reel him in. Well, you know who did? God Almighty, the Lord himself reeled Lindsey Graham in. Okay, that's what happened. His number came up, and God took him. Now, I don't know if God took him all the way to heaven. I doubt it. I mean, he would have had to repent for all the horrible things that he's done, and I doubt he would do that. The guy's it's way too prideful. He would never do that. Anyway, that's a different subject. This reminds me, though, of something that Keith Knight was talking about. He calls the Trump test, because, the thing about Trump is we knew Trump in the private sector. In other words, Trump was well known in the private sector. He was a world famous person acting in the private sector. And then he joins, the political realm to do public service, air fingers quotes, public service. And all of a sudden he's very dangerous. So just look at like Trump when he was in the private sector, and just say to yourself, who could he really hurt? Could he do a lot of damage? I mean, sure, he could force some people into bankruptcy. He could do some deals and, hurt some individuals for sure. But look at how much damage he's doing as a public servant of the state. And this is the whole point about political power, political authority, is that this is why it's so important to try to understand what somebody believes before you elect them. What do they believe? Because there's going to be pressure in this role. If you become president of the United States, you're going to feel pressure. There are going to be people, just like they told George Bush in 2008 when the financial collapse was happening. Mr. President, if you don't sign this bill, the entire economic system is going to crash. And George Bush went, because he doesn't know anything. He didn't know anything about economics. He didn't know. These guys are telling him, hey, if you don't do this, the whole thing is going to collapse on your head. And so he signs it, But that's why you cannot put idiots into these roles. They have to believe in something. They have to have some foundational knowledge about that's based on principle about what it is they're stepping into. This is why I never think, in general, I don't think you should hire people that are good in business for government, because, government, running a business is not the same thing as running a government. And a lot of people don't realize that. All right, let's continue here with Megyn Kelly.
Sir, not Israel. You don't work for them, Lindsey. This is getting insane, you guys. Someone needs to reel him in, and he needs to be absolutely nowhere near the president's orbit, as I said yesterday. But Fox News, I tweeted this out, is parading him around on all of its shows like he's a Hefner bunny in stockings and a bushy tail. They know exactly what President Trump wants to see and the messaging he wants to hear, and it is as bellicose and war-hungry as you could possibly imagine. It is an isolationist or non-interventionalist worst nightmare. It is exactly the opposite of what President Trump ran on, exactly the opposite. And yet Fox News is salivating over the prospect of more war, an extended conflict, and Lindsey Graham is its spokesperson. And President Trump seems to be enjoying that, because if he weren't, we wouldn't be seeing that anymore. These sound bites that we're going to play for you are all from one interview that Graham did last night with Sean Hannity. And I just have to say up front, Hannity offered zero pushback to any of this. Zero to anything you were about to hear. Like, why not do your viewers the service of just saying at least, hey, here's what your critics are saying. Here's what the president's critics are saying. Fox prides itself on having allegedly more independents watching its programming than any other cable news channel. Well, that's not saying much. But why not service them and offer both sides? At least you're not going to have somebody who actually disagrees with Lindsey Graham, but you as the anchor, I used to do this. I know a thing or two about how to anchor a show that would wind up becoming the #1 show in cable for a Fox News audience in a way that's meaningful. Offer pushback if you don't have the other side. You, Sean, have to be the other side. I mean, that's what Roger Ailes praised all the time when I was at Fox. He loved it when you did that because he thought it was a service to the audience. Those days are gone. Now it's you cheerlead the war, support the military-industrial complex, or you're a loser. It's infuriating because we're talking about life and death. We're talking about...
Yeah, this is something that I've noticed a while back. I mean, I haven't watched Fox News in at least a couple of years. You just don't get the whole story. You get the story, and I know there's a lot of you out there that maybe watch Fox News and still like it or whatever. And basically when Tucker left Fox News, that's when I quit watching it. But I used to watch Bill O'Reilly and think that what he was saying was accurate. And I can't even believe I thought that. But the bottom line is, anchors are not investigative journalists. They're not the ones out investigating these situations. And so they're pretty much just reading the news. And Megyn, I don't think I play it, but somewhere in this, she talks about that, how she just read the news and she didn't know much about it and, never looked into it. And she cheered the Iraq war on because that's what the teleprompter told her to say. And she didn't know any better. And she goes, she took responsibility. She said, I'm embarrassed that I did that. And I wish I hadn't, and all this other stuff. But bottom line is, man, that's what's going on. And of course, if all the guests you bring on are pro-bomb Iran, then you don't ever really get another point of view. You just have the bomb Iran point of view, and you don't have any of this. You don't have it's not like you got Ron Paul coming on there after, Lindsey Graham to give you the blowback story, the Petraeus insurgent math. And, a lot of these people are innocent people. They're just trying to raise their families and do things like we do. I mean, I'm around family and they'll tell me things like, Seth, these people in Iran, they're different. They're crazy. They just want to kill us just because they want to kill us. It's like, what? No, that's not how human beings work. I mean, you would have to be, look, if the whole country were that way, that means they would be like Jeffrey Dahmers. They would all be Jeffrey Dahmers. They would all be psychopaths. And look, that's just not probable. Forget about, I don't know, forget about what your thinking is. I mean, just the probability of that is about as close to zero as you can possibly get without being zero. So I don't know. I think people, some people are more susceptible than others to propaganda, and that's just where we are. I mean, I don't know how to solve it. If I knew how to solve it, I would have already done it, and we would be talking about something else, I would think. All right, let's jump into the next clip here real quick.
He's got the president's job. We elected President Trump. That's who we want in that office. We do not want some crazed, childless maniac from South Carolina calling the shots in the Middle East. First up here, Senator Graham telling Saudi Arabia that the United...
Before we play that clip, I want to say something. She talks about a childless maniac. I think there is something to be said for people that have children. I think if you've had children, you kind of see life beyond your life, and not only that, but you also can relate to seeing a bomb just take out some little toddler just walking down a dirt road. Your heart cries for that, it's saddened for that. And someone like Lindsey Graham, who never, I don't think he ever got married. He didn't have any kids. Your world is just, it's all about you and what you're doing in the world. And I don't know. I think maybe that's kind of an unhealthy place for people to be, in politics with all that power, when you don't have, some sort of vision of life beyond you, I don't know. To be honest, I'm just glad the guy's dead. I'm just going to say it. I'm glad he's gone. I don't have to listen to him anymore. I don't have to listen to his unhinged warmongering about every little country, everywhere, all over the world. And in a minute, you're going to hear him bitch about Spain. Spain? Come on. Spain is part of the West. That's just ridiculous. But that's just who Lindsey Graham was. All right, let's continue.
The United States is willing to go to war for the Saudis, depending on Lindsey's following conditions. Listen here.
Finally, to my friends in Saudi Arabia, I've been your biggest champion. I think the Crown Prince has taken Saudi Arabia in a completely different direction in a good way. But here's what I want to say to Saudi Arabia tonight. I'm willing to do a mutual defense agreement with your country to give you protection in perpetuity. Under the agreement I've been pushing, and I hope we can continue to talk about, if you're attacked by Iran, we would go to war for you.
I'm willing to give you... Who the fuck are you? What do you mean I? Let me tell you, I voted for Donald Trump. I campaigned for Donald Trump. I endorsed Donald Trump. And I voted for him willingly and happily. I did not vote for Senator Lindsey Graham, nor would I ever. And I think a lot of South Carolinians are going to have second thoughts about having put him in the U.S. Senate. I will agree. What? We never elected you as commander-in-chief. This is outrageous.
Yeah, man, that's to me, that's just indicative of how much lust for power that he had. He had no humility. Zero, less than zero. I mean, it's really unbelievable. And I watched a couple of those Sunday shows today, and I was just like, oh boy, I definitely know what I'm going to talk about today, because this is ridiculous. This guy, if ever I wanted to see a human being die, and now this is horrible to say. I mean, I feel a little bit odd about saying something like this. This is how bad this guy was. And I want you to think about that when you've heard what I'm saying about Lindsey Graham, and I want you to listen to what they say on 60 Minutes about Lindsey Graham. I want you to listen to what they say on ABC and NBC and CBS and Fox and all these places, and listen to all these people just drool all over Lindsey Graham and how we're going to miss Lindsey Graham. Man, these people, you should make note of their names. And if they're elected officials, you should not vote for them. You should vote them out of office. If they're pundits talking on TV, you should stop listening to them. There's just no reason There's not even one reason. Even if you said, well, we just said he's a Republican, I don't care. He's that bad. Okay, he is such a horrible person, and I'm glad he's dead. I mean, I found myself, the song that was going on off in my head was "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead." That's how I felt about it when I heard about it, and I was shocked. I mean, my wife's telling me about it, and she's like, well, the guy's been there forever, and you say he's a warmonger, and I'm guessing all these names. And she says, no. She said Lindsey Graham. I said Mitch McConnell, and she said no. Finally we saw it was Lindsey Graham, and I was like, Lindsey Graham? I mean, he's only 71, which just goes to show you, you never know. My wife used to say that anything can get you after 40, so keep that in mind. All right, let's go on to the next clip here.
What? We never elected you as commander-in-chief. This is outrageous. Next up, as I said, Senator Graham sent a message to any isolationist in the United States and any in South Carolina that put him in office who doesn't fully support this war, that he's not with you. He's with Israel. Not even with another American. He's with Israel, no questions asked. Watch.
I believe with all my heart and soul, if the regime in Iran still stands when this is over, we've made a mistake. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would use it. They've been lying about what they're doing with their nuclear program. They want to bomb because they're Nazis. They're crazy. They want to kill all the Jews, and the Jews have been down that road before. To our friends in Israel, God bless you. I'm with you in every way. To all the anti-Semites, to all the isolationists, I don't believe. Forget it. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel. I will be with Israel to our dying day.
Okay. I don't know what an anti-Semitite is, but the isolationists, forget it. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel. Okay. Right now, the majority of the country are feeling isolationist. They don't want this war. They don't.
What is it with these politicians that are with Israel? Like Israel, like you had Ted Cruz, I don't know, months ago saying the entire reason he ran for Senate is to support Israel. It's like, what? By the way, just incidentally, I'm going to go ahead and mention it now. I was going to do a show on it, but I'm going to be gone all next week. And so I won't do a show for probably a whole week. But this Section 219 in the Defense Authorization Act, the NDA, the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, this Section 219 is very, very problematic. And if you get a chance to call your congressman or senator, you need to tell them, look, don't vote for the bill or figure out a way to get that out of the bill. Okay? Because what that does is it integrates, they use the word integrate, it integrates the U.S. military with the Israeli IDF on an intelligence basis. This is bad in so many ways. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but for example, I don't really care about these defense contractors like Raytheon and companies like that. But what's interesting about this is that this is one of the provisions, or one of the things this will allow, is it'll allow, instead of Raytheon to get a contract with the U.S. government, it'll allow Israel to get a contract with the U.S. government at Raytheon's expense. I mean, again, I have no love for Raytheon, but if you're an American and you're working for Raytheon or Northrop Grumman or Boeing or any of these companies that make defense, weaponry, this is probably not going to be good for you, because now you're going to have Israel is going to be a legitimate contractor in the procurement process. And that's just one negative thing. But the bigger negative thing is, because we're going to be integrated, if Israel decides to, invade Egypt, our military will have to participate in that. So it's us losing our independence, our say over what our military does and does not do. It's already bad enough right now, right? Because we can't get our government to not invade Iran and things like that. It's going to be even worse when they integrate us with the IDF. Okay. The other thing I was thinking about is, one of the things I think is pushing this or is causing this is there's a lot of pressure now to defund Israel. Okay, we give Israel like $4 billion a year, just cash money, right, and weapons. And there's been a lot of pressure on various congresspeople to defund that, to stop giving money and weapons to Israel. If they integrate the two militaries, then you'll have people running around going, you'll have congressmen and senators running around going, we don't give Israel any money anymore. What are you talking about? We don't fund these wars. Well, yeah, we do now because our militaries are integrated. So our $1 trillion budget or whatever now Israel's going to have access to. So this is just bad in so many ways. You need to call your congressman and tell them to either get 219, Provision 219 out of the bill, or just vote no on the NDAA. Just vote no. And let it be known that your vote is going to be no as long as that 219 provision is in there. We don't want to integrate our militaries with Israel. And I mean, that's like giving over our sovereignty. In fact, there's nobody, go look it up. You can't even find out whose idea this was or who was sponsoring it. We think it's Netanyahu's idea, but there's no senator or congressman sponsoring it. You know how like a lot of times you'll have like the Affordable Care Act will be sponsored by, this senator and that senator, and they're usually from different sides of the aisle. None of that is happening on this Section 219. Not many people are asking, but when people do ask, hey, whose idea was this 219? Nobody knows. Nobody actually knows. Most people just say, well, it was Netanyahu's idea. Well, Netanyahu is not a representative of the United States government. Who gives a shit what he thinks or wants? This is how absurd our government has gotten. All right, let's continue with Megan here.
Want the foreign entanglement. They don't think that we have to do Israel's bidding in the Middle East. They think that Israel can handle itself, which it can. That it doesn't need American troops sacrificing their blood and treasure on the fields of Iran. So how dare you? How dare you say I'm not with you? You represent the isolationists and the neocons alike, sir, in the state of South Carolina, in the U.S. Senate. This is like some sort of he's given.
I wouldn't be surprised if Lindsey Graham was behind that Section 219, and it's just on the down low, like nobody really knows. But I wouldn't be surprised. As hard as an advocate as he was for Israel and buddies with Netanyahu, I'm sure he's behind that. But it doesn't matter. We don't want it. You think we got problems now with Israel? You wait till we integrate these militaries. We'll have problems like you've never seen before. All right, let's click to the next clip here real quick. And this is the last one, and then we'll wrap up the show.
So I know how the game works, and the game is dishonest, and I refuse to be a part of that again. No. We'll report I am rooting for victory. Unlike these weirdos who are like cheering on the Iranians right now. I want the United States to win this now that we're in it. I want a solid defeat if it can be achieved. But I'm also going to be honest, and it's not going universally well over there. We're getting propaganda from the administration, and then we're getting just the naysayers who report nothing but bad news for the United States, which isn't true either. I mean, it's quite a feat to have sunk their entire Navy, which we appear to have done. It's, you know, don't underestimate the power of the U.S. military, but the bloodlust by the administration's spokespeople, and this guy chief among them, is very disconcerting. It's very off-putting. Then, went on to issue a warning to Spain. Okay, what are we now doing to Spain? Not to mention the entire Arab world.
To our friends in Spain, man, you have lost your way. I don't want to do business with you anymore. I want our air bases out of Spain into a country that will let us use them. To our Arab friends, I've tried to help you construct a new Mideast. You need to up your game here. I can't go to South Carolina and say we're fighting and you won't publicly fight. What you're doing behind the scenes, that has to stop. The double dealing of the Arab world when it comes to this stuff needs to end.
No one elected you as our commander-in-chief. Shut the fuck up. Get off the national scene. You've disgraced yourself and endangered our troops long enough. The business about the Arab world is a point that should be discussed because it did emerge that it was not only Israel reportedly urging President Trump to get into this war, not reportedly, Israel urged President Trump to get into this war, period. Lindsey Graham was flying over to Israel and briefing a foreign country's leader on how to manipulate the sitting U.S. president. That's been confirmed. Okay, that's the Wall Street Journal reporting. The Wall Street Journal, that's been very supportive of this war, that's very neocon-y, whose owners are the Murdochs, with whom the president remains close. It's on again, off again. Just yesterday, there were pictures of Jared and Ivanka at Rupert Murdoch's 95th birthday party all over the internet. That's the paper reporting that Lindsey Graham, who's proud of it, it was in an interview with Lindsey Graham. It wasn't like, no, anonymous sources say. Lindsey Graham gave the Wall Street Journal an interview and reported firsthand that he's been flying over to Israel to deal with a foreign country's leader on how to manipulate the sitting president into war. Everyone telling those of us who said Israel got us into this, that we're anti-Semites, you are fucking wrong. Read the paper. Listen to the guy who is the chief advisor now to the sitting president. You may not like it, but it's true. It's crazy that this has been allowed. We did go through the confirmation process for an actual Secretary of State.
Okay. Yeah. No, it is crazy. It's crazy. Whether it really doesn't matter whether was Lindsey Graham who is flying over to Israel and coaching Netanyahu on how to manipulate Trump to get him to bomb Iran, or if it's Netanyahu himself. If it's Lindsey Graham, it's treason. He shouldn't be doing that. I don't know what it is. I mean, I guess it's treason. It's something. It's got to be illegal, I would think. He's not, to her point, he's not was not the Secretary of State, or he wasn't in the cabinet. He's not authorized to negotiate on behalf of the State Department or the U.S. government. Senators and Congress people are representatives of the people. Originally, it was the people on the House of Representatives side and the state on the senator side. But now both of them just represent the people. And you're not, the Senate's involved in, carrying out treaties and things like that. But I don't know, man, going over to a foreign country and coaching that prime minister on how to talk to our president about getting into a war, that doesn't sound quite right to me. That should be illegal if it's not already. But yeah, who elected you? I mean, she's right. It's I don't approve of that anymore. And I encourage you guys to sign on to this policy that I'm decided to create or whatever. Dude, we didn't elect you. I don't know. I'm just glad the guy's dead. Okay. I know that sounds horrible. And I guess today's just, you're going to see the horrible Seth, but we are all much better off for the passing of Lindsey Graham, just like we were better off when John McCain died. We don't have this gang of 8 anymore. It's down to the gang of 2 or 3 maybe or something. But I'm glad he's gone. I'm glad he's dead. I don't know if he came up with the Section 219 about merging, the U.S. military with the IDF, but man, if he did, good. He won't be around to advocate for it. Maybe we can get rid of it. Call your congressman, call your senator, tell them no, vote no on that. You do not want any more involvement with Israel. Okay? Israel, look, if we do this, if we combine our militaries, if we merge, that's what it says in the bill, that Section 219. If we do that, Israel's going to invade Egypt. Now, maybe not immediately, but eventually they're going to invade Egypt. They're going to finish the job in Lebanon. They're going to invade Egypt. They're going to invade. They're going to take over Syria somehow. They're going to move into Syria, more into Syria, into Jordan. The Greater Israel Project covers all that land, and all those people are going to die because now they'll have the U.S. military behind them. In other words, we'll have Israelis telling us where we need to fight, and we'll have to listen to them. They're going to have command over our troops, over our Air Force, over our Navy. That is unacceptable. Unacceptable. Just think about it. If that were to happen, how would we, the people, stop it? We have no control over the Israeli government. We have no control over Netanyahu. We don't even have control over our own politicians, but we're supposed to, right? So that just cannot happen. We cannot do that. We can't go down that road. I think I'm going to do a whole show on it because it's that serious of a problem. If, in the meantime, you can go listen to Tucker's show. Tucker Carlson talks to Dennis Kucinich. A lot of you probably don't even know who Dennis Kucinich was or is. He was a senator from Ohio for years in the Senate. And, you know, staunch advocate of anti-war. But, you know, look, I mean, I agree with him. The business of the United States is business. It's not all this war. And we just need to get back to that. All right. Thank you guys for coming in and listening. Again, I won't be doing any shows next week. I'll be out of town on business, but I'll get right to it when I get back, and we'll have another show for you on Who Gets to Decide. In the meantime, go to YouTube, like and subscribe to the episode, and get that algorithm working a little bit, and come back next week and or week after next, and I'll have a brand new show for you on Who Gets to Decide. All right, everybody. Peace. Take care. We'll see you.